Hello and welcome to ActivTrades Weekly Outlook. US big tech earnings are out this week, and there's also no shortage of other major company reports to keep investors on their toes. After Tesla's earnings miss last week, many will be closely watching for a more positive result from the Big Five. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia and Alphabet are predicted to have an average of 34% increase in earnings year over year, according to data from Bloomberg Intelligence. Also to watch this week are the monetary policy meetings from Canada and the European Union. As inflation and employment continues to run above forecasts, the outcomes of these meetings will be very interesting. Stay tuned and let's dive in. Australian manufacturing and services PMIs are to be published on Monday. From a preliminary reading of 48.2 to 48.7 in September, the Jude Bank Flash Australia manufacturing PMI increased from the previous month's reading of 49.6. The most recent report indicated that the factory operating conditions have declined for 7 consecutive months, whereas the Jude Bank Australia Services PMI improved from 47.8 in August to 51.8 in September, according to the final reading. Those results are expected to fall slightly for October, however, to around 48.6 and 51.1 respectively. Major earnings to include Sandvik, ZTE Corp, Philips. Germany's GfK Consumer Climate Indicator dropped from a revised -25.6 in September to -26.5 as October began, falling short of expectations in the lowest reading since April. When the latest report is published on Tuesday, analysts expect a further decline to around -27 for November. The UK is due to release a range of employment data on Tuesday, including their unemployment rate and employment change. The unemployment rate increased to 4.3% from May to July, the highest level since the third quarter of 2021, and is expected to remain there for August, suggesting that the labour market may finally be cooling off. Additionally, the number of people employed in the UK fell by 207,000 in the 3 months to July, which came on the heels of a 66,000 drop in the previous period. A further drop of around 198,000 is expected for the 3 months to August. A collection of October manufacturing and services PMIs are due across the day from Japan, France, Germany, the EU, the UK and the US, among others. Hundreds of buying managers are surveyed to judge business conditions like employment, production, new order prices, supply deliveries and inventory. The PMIs are a leading indication of economic health since firms react swiftly to market conditions and their buying managers may have the most current and relevant economic outlook. Over 50 in the index implies industry growth, below shows decline. Services had been climbing across the board for months recently, however this appears to be softening while manufacturing is mostly gaining some ground. Major earnings releases to include Microsoft, Alphabet, Visa, Coca-Cola, Novartis, Texas Instruments. Australia reports its latest CPI data on Wednesday. In the second quarter of 2023, the annual inflation rate fell to 6% from 7% in the previous period and below market expectations of 6.2%. This was the lowest figure since the third quarter of 2022 as goods inflation slowed. The annualized Q3 figures expected to fall again to around 5.1%, while the monthly indicator of September is expected to fall from 5.3% to around 4.7%. After being revised up to 85.8 in August, the Ifo Business Climate Indicator for Germany dropped to 85.7 in September, below the market forecasts. For the 5th month in a row, business sentiment has declined. However, for the October report due on Wednesday, the forecast is for a slight bump to around 86.9. The Bank of Canada will meet on monetary policy this week, with the decision statement published on Wednesday. In its September meetings, the BoC maintained its overnight rate at 5% as financial markets expected, marking another pause in the tightening cycle. The board at the time said that the future rate decisions will be based on economic signals, and some believe that recent unexpected cooling of inflation figures will help to encourage another pause. US new home sales are due to be published on Wednesday as well. August sales fell 8.7% to 675,000 seasonally adjusted, revising the 8% growth in the month prior and missing market projections of 700,000 purchases. The significant fall was consistent with rising mortgage rates. However, analysts expect a slight bump for September to around 680K. Major earnings releases to include Meta Platforms, Assa Abloy, Thermo Fisher Scientific, IBM and Boeing. The European Central Bank will gather for another monetary policy meeting this week with a decision statement due on Thursday and a press conference to follow half an hour later. The minutes from the most recent ECB meeting revealed that the members of the central bank were split on whether or not to raise interest rates last month, where the rates were raised 25 basis points to 4.5%. Expectations are for the bank to pause the tightening cycle this month. After a revised 5.6% drop in July, new orders for manufactured durable goods in the US unexpectedly climbed 0.2% month-over-month in August. When the new report for September is released on Thursday, expectations are for a further increase of around 0.6% month-over-month. The US will publish GDP data on Thursday as well. Second quarter growth in the US this year was 2.1%, which was steady from the prior estimate and slightly lower than the upwardly revised 2.2% growth in the first quarter. A boom to around 4.1% is expected for the third quarter compared to the last. Also from the US comes the monthly pending new home sales report due on Thursday. In August, sales in the US fell by 18.7% from the same time a year earlier, the sharpest annual drop in 3 months, with declines occurring in all 4 regions. A further drop of around 16% is expected year-over-year for September. Major earnings releases to include Amazon, PetroChina, BYD, MasterCard, Merck & Co, Intel and UPS. A range of French economic data is due on Friday, including GDP and inflation figures among others. In the second quarter of 2023, the French GDP increased by 1% from the second quarter of the previous year, and early projections are for another increase of around 0.7% from Q3. French inflation has been trending down from February's 6.3% high to 4.9% for August and September year-over-year. The US will release its PCE prices, personal income and personal spending reports on Friday. Core PCE prices in the US climbed by 0.1% month-over-month in August, the smallest gain since November 2020. The annual rate, the Federal Reserve's preferred measure of inflation, fell as expected to 3.9%, the lowest level since May 2021. Growth of another 0.3% is expected for September. Following a 0.2% increase in July, personal income in the US climbed by 0.4% in August, which was in line with market expectations. Similarly, consumer spending also climbed 0.4% from July to August, following a 0.9% gain in July that was revised upwards. Growth of around 0.4% and 0.3% are respectively expected for September. Major earnings releases to include Equinor, ExxonMobil, Chevron. If you would like to read our full outlook, please visit the analysis section on our website. That's all for this week. Happy trading!